5 expenses that never show up on your P&L that could actually be costing you everything. That's the conversation today on the podcast. Welcome to Business Growth Blueprint, the podcast for faith-driven business owners who want to grow in profitability, leadership, and culture. I'm your host, BJ O'Neill, the Coach's Coach, a founding partner with John Maxwell Certified Leadership, best-selling author, and business owner, and I help equip business owners just like you with the tools to build something great, because every breakthrough starts with a blueprint. Expenses. Perhaps you take a peek at your P&L, monthly, quarterly, maybe once a year. Probably you shouldn't do that. And you make decisions, right? You think about, okay, where can we be more efficient? What are the things that we need to take a peek at to determine what we need to control? And so one of the things in our coaching system where we coach thousands of business owners all over the world, and we have an entire training that's all around the financial literacy on what to pay attention to in a profit and loss statement. But here's the thing. Oftentimes, the things that are actually costing us don't show up on the profit and loss statement. And that's our discussion today. When you look at Proverbs 27:23, know the conditions of your flock. So we talk about on this podcast often just the lens of faith and how it applies to business, to the marketplace. And oftentimes there can be a struggle, if you will, or tension in the balance between this whole idea around money, this whole idea around costs, what should it really be or whatever, and we kind of like seesaw back and forth, and we really want to strive ultimately for a balance. And here's why: is that we tend, as people of faith, we tend to be mission driven and not margin driven, but we think that's a strength until it's not. Meaning this, out of balance where, hey, we want to do the right things for the right reasons, and all this kind of stuff, and we drift so far into mission-driven mindset that we don't stay into margin-driven mindset. And you got to do both. As a believer, as someone who, we make the decision that from a faith perspective, I'm using the biblical lens to build my business. And I see it all the time in working with businesses where they struggle with this whole, idea. And I think that the ultimate answer really is just balance. Here's why. And here's one of the reasons, one of the, we'll call it the motivators, if you will, of sharing these 5 things today that I'm going to share with you that could be costing you a lot that don't really show up in actual dollars and cents by themselves. When you look at the world and the economy, globally even, but certainly in the U.S., where we've got to have provision, right? We've got to feed families. We've got to have mortgages and vehicles and food, and that's provision. And so as a person of faith, when you're looking at the business, when you begin to shift the way you look at it, more about transformation, about what I can do and the value that I can bring to the marketplace, well, you can't do that if there's not enough meat on the bone. And so we go beyond just trying to cut corners and, control this expense and stop buying over here. And we actually look at it from a strategic perspective, which is the whole idea around a blueprint. So at the end of the day, we have to start to recognize, hey, what are the areas and where are the areas existing that we're not either paying attention to, we haven't thought about, or it's on the whiteboard, if you will, but we're not actually taking any action to do anything about it, okay? So 5 different things, and then I'm going to give you an action item to really kind of consider what it means for you. Number 1, the cost of unclear decision-making. I want you to let that kind of sink in and just process that for a moment on, it could be a project. It could be the actual direction of what you're trying to do with the business. Maybe you're trying to create another vertical, or you're trying to even build another division. Maybe you're expanding the locations of the business. All these things. Well, if we aren't clear, we need to understand that when there is if you're looking at like a camera and you turn the lens a little bit and all of a sudden there's lack of focus, well, now we're not going to be able to get better answers, better direction, and better understanding. What does this do? Well, it provides more stress. It improves lack of morale with your team. And even if your team is 2 people, if you got 2 employees, or if you've got 200, doesn't matter. When it improves anxiety, it improves just a dabbling effect, if you will. And so we have to make sure that as we are making decisions, that we truly have clarity on what we're deciding, why we're deciding it, and what we're going to do with it, for it, to it. Like, we're not doing it. Here's the plan of action. We've got to have clarity. So that's the question, the cost of unclear decision making. Number 2, the cost, this is a big one, the cost of the wrong person in the wrong seat. And I know that this is a struggle sometimes with people that certainly of faith. We love people. Oftentimes we don't want to hurt them. We value them, and we understand that them being employed, they've got a family that they're providing for. But when we're just allowing the wrong person in the wrong role, that is catastrophic on a lot of different areas. Number 1, brace for impact. When we're not clear with that individual that they are in the wrong place, we're kind of not telling the truth. We're thinking one thing, we're to ourselves. Maybe you have a business partner. Maybe you have a leadership team, and you see things one way about an individual in the role. Great person, you like them, but that's just not their gift mix for the role that they are in. Well, when we're not telling them that, number 1, you think about what work is not getting accomplished. I had this conversation recently with a business owner, and one of I like to call it kind of a Swiss Army-ish type of person. In other words, they can do a lot of. They're an assistant, but they also do multiple things as well in different ways. But the question was, hey, they have a lot of idle time. We need to give them more things to do. And I'm like, why? Like, what's going on? And when I looked around the room, you got in their case, you had other talented individuals who were overwhelmed and overloaded. And it's like, well, why are they not? Well, they can't do this, they can't do that. They all these reasons. I'm like, well, then are they the right person for that role that's supposed to pick up those things? Yeah, but and it's one of those things, right? And so we're not being honest with them. And I say all the time, to be unclear is to be unkind, and I don't want to be unkind. But you have to understand that you're running a business. And even if you don't own the business and you're in a position of authority and decision-making, that wrong people, and oftentimes we get the people in the wrong seat to start with because we hired incorrectly in the beginning. And so we got to make a decision, because that's costing you time, energy, and money times 100. Number 3, the cost of no follow-up. So let's, I don't know exactly what business you're in, obviously, but let's use a service-based style business, right? We talk about those a lot. Those are, hundreds upon hundreds, if not thousands, in every market all over the world. And I like to use even analogies and stories that I go through personally. And then right now we're in the middle of at our home is putting in a fence, and called several people. Took forever to get them to come out. And they came out, they made measurements, and days upon days upon days go by and nothing. Why? No systems and no structure. Matter of fact, 2 of them never did hear from them. Left a message online, called them, and that's an indicator of zero follow-up. But here's what will happen, is that individual or that business and that business owner, those people like that, and this is you, don't let this offend you, just let it speak to you, is they'll be the very ones that will claim that the economy's not good, things are slow or whatever. Not true. It's a lack of strategy. And in this case, you must have a strategic follow-up system along every parts of the customer journey. Okay. Next, the cost of no outside perspective, and no consultative voice. Whether you're working with a business coach or an advisor or whatever. Here's why. When you're internal, all right, and the longer that you own the business, you end up having what I call the curse of knowledge, right? Meaning you understand the business. You know what goes on. You know every single thing for the most part about the business. And if you're not careful, you can develop narratives, ideas, thought patterns that are inconsistent and incorrect because you don't have a good view anymore of what it actually looks like, sounds like, feels like on the outside. That is the value of having someone on the outside speaking in so that you can maintain a healthy view of the business in multiple ways. Okay, and so you look at that and you're like, well, what do I like? What's going to be provided through that? And it needs to be two different things. One, the outside perspective. Number two, there are strategies that if you're not listening to others who are working with others as well, you're not going to hear and see and know what's happening in the marketplace, right? And this is the reason why so many people end up doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, is hoping, not a strategy, by the way, hoping that it changes, hoping that it shifts, right? You must engage with someone who is, one, telling you what you need to hear, letting you see the blind spots that you cannot see on your own oftentimes, and sharing strategy that you've not even thought about. And the last one, especially for the actual business owner, the cost of lost focus, distraction. And so what that means is like, depending upon your personality style, right? So if you're a high visionary, you're, every day, and lots of entrepreneurs are obviously going to fall in this category. Every day you think of a new idea. And look, we've got to have innovation. But if that types of thinking takes over the daily strategies, that's a distraction not only to you, it's a distraction to your team, it's a distraction to customer flow. And this is like the invisible profit killer, because you start chasing all these things. It's like chasing a rabbit. It's the shiny object part, right? And so there has to be a balance between the, keeping focused on priorities. You can do a lot of things, but you can't do everything. You got to stay focused on priorities in an easier way. I like to say is chunking things down over the quarter. We all think in 90-day sprints. The calendar's built that way. The seasons are like that for most people, unless you live in a tropical area or parts of the world that don't have a lot of fluctuation with the seasons. But spring, summer, fall, winter, right? So we think this way. So when you look at your priorities of your business, you need to place them inside those, call them sprints, call them whatever you want to call them, but the quarters, if you will, to say, you know what, over the next 90 days, that's not a lot of time. Okay, so that's why it makes it easy. Over the next 90 days, we are going to focus on these priorities. And if a new idea, business owner, if a new idea shows up, we're going to make a decision on if we're going to wrap our arms around it. It makes good sense to be nimble and to do this, but what are we going to get rid of over here? All right, that's a strategy and a structure. But when we don't have that, and it's just every day and every week and every month feels different, and it is different, that's because we are shattered when it comes to focus. So here's what I want you to do, all right? If you take nothing away from this episode, do this one thing. Before you go to sleep tonight, I want you to pick one of these 5 things that we just identified. And I want you to ask yourself, what is this costing me? One of those, likely, done this enough and had enough conversation with business owners, one of them, if not more, definitely jumped out to you. You're like, ooh. And the jumping out, here's how you know. If we talked about one of those and you had a natural resistance and friction to it, it's probably speaking to you because you know the truth. So you need to get by yourself, and by yourself meaning alone and not in a distractive moment and environment. And if you have to just sit in your car, I used to joke all the time when our kids were little. My wife would, go and do her thing or whatever. When she'd come back, I'd hear the garage door come up, and I'd hear the car pull in the garage, but no spouse. Like, where is she? I go out there and she's sitting in her car. Open the door. What are you doing? She goes, being alone. And I'm like, I get it. And so if you need that kind of focus, just to be alone, be somewhere where you can think and be transparent, not honest, but transparent with yourself on one of the 5 things that we just talked about, to determine, as I mentioned, what is this costing me? Because once you know that, and once you see that, and once you understand that and understand it, then you can do something about it. Okay? And so there you go. Like always, don't let this just be information. Oh, that's good. Oh, you know what? Probably check on that. Take action. Activity is the bedrock of success. You can't fix things. You can't work through things. You can't wrestle with things if you are not being active. Hey, join me on the next episode as we discuss why your team doesn't trust you. The answers might shock you. Join me.